When you look at the history of modern Africa, it's hard to find a figure as polarizing as Ethiopia's Emperor Menelik II. For some, he's this incredible symbol of black sovereignty, the man who stood up to European colonialism and won. But for others, he's a brutal conqueror whose actions left behind wounds that, frankly, still haven't healed. So we're going to dive into this really complex legacy. And that really is the heart of the matter, isn't it? How can one single person hold these two completely opposite truths? History is a powerful reminder that history is almost never a simple tale of good guys versus bad guys. I mean, just look at this. The contrast is absolutely stark. On one side, you've got the savior, the leader who defeated a major European power and pulled a modern state together. But on the other side of the coin, he's seen as a ruthless conqueror who crushed peoples in the South. This has led to some really heavy accusations of atrocities and is even seen as the starting point for a lot of today's ethnic conflicts. And both of these stories are deeply, deeply believed. All right, so here's how we're going to tackle this. First, we'll look at his crowning achievement, the story of him as the hero of Adwa. Then, we'll completely switch gears and look at the view from the South, where he's remembered as a conqueror. After that, we'll check out his role as a modernizer. And finally, we'll see how this whole debate is still very much alive today. Okay, so let's start with the narrative that much of the world knows, Menelik, the anti-colonial icon. This is the story that really put him on the map as a defender of African independence in an age when Europe was carving up the continent. So, the whole thing really kicked off with the Treaty of Wuchal in 1889. Menelik thought he was signing a pretty standard treaty of friendship and cooperation with Italy. But here's the catch. The Italian version of one article, Article 17, basically turned Ethiopia into an Italian protectorate. When Menelik found out about this, shall we say, diplomatic trickery, he tore up the treaty. Well, Italy didn't like that one bit, so they invaded, and that all led to the legendary Battle of Adwa on March 1st, 1896. And the result? It was an absolutely stunning victory for Ethiopia. Because of Adwa, Ethiopia became the only African nation to successfully fight off European colonization during the whole scramble for Africa. I mean, that is a truly historic achievement. And this wasn't just a big deal for Ethiopia. As the author Milton Elamati points out here, this victory echoed across the globe. It was seen as a win for the entire African continent, a powerful, powerful symbol that inspired Pan-African movements everywhere and sent a clear message. Black sovereignty could and would be defended. Okay, but that's only one side of the story. While Menelik was busy fighting off Europeans up in the north, he was also expanding his own empire down into the south. And for the people he conquered, the story isn't one of liberation. It's one of subjugation. Now, to really understand this perspective, we have to talk about something called folk history. This isn't the history you read in textbooks written by emperors. This is the history that's passed down from generation to generation, the stories and traditions that tell a community's own story from their point of view. And right now, we're going to look at the folk history of the Oromo Borana people. You see, in the Borana tradition, Menelik's conquest wasn't some random, out-of-the-blue event. It was actually a prophesied catastrophe. Their prophets, the Raga, had warned them it was coming. And what's really crucial in their telling of history is that they believe this disaster could have been avoided if only people had listened. And you can see this reflected right in their own historical timeline. At the exact same time Menelik was preparing for his great victory at Adwa, the Borana Oral Chronicle marks the period with one single devastating phrase: invasion of the empire and disaster. So, for the Borana, this was never just about losing a war. It's remembered as the moment their entire world broke down, the moment their sacred customs, their Ada Borana, started to vanish under the weight of this new empire. Okay, so we've got the anti-colonial hero, and we've got the brutal conqueror. But there's a third piece to this puzzle: Menelik, the modernizer. And for him, modernization wasn't just about progress for its own sake. It was a weapon. It was a survival tactic. See, Menelik was sharp. He knew that to keep the European powers out for good and to actually control this massive new empire he was building, Ethiopia had to catch up with the times. So he used modernization as a tool to build a strong central government and to project Ethiopian power on the world stage. And the things he introduced really were the pillars of the modern nation. He kicked off a railway project to the sea for trade, huge. He brought in the country's first telephone and telegraph services. He founded the capital city, Addis Ababa. He armed his military with modern weapons, which of course were pretty important at Adwa, and he created a national currency and established the first modern schools. But here's the million-dollar question, right? This modernization definitely built a stronger state. But who did that state really serve? Was it a nation that benefited the newly conquered peoples of the South, or did it just lock in their subjugation? And that question leads us right into the heated debate over his legacy today. And this isn't just some dusty old historical debate. The legacy of Menelik II is a live wire in Ethiopia right now. The tensions that he either created or solidified are still shaping politics and identity in the present day. This comment from a Reddit thread just nails it. There's really no middle ground when it comes to Menelik. As this person says, you either worship him as a hero or you absolutely hate him. The debate is just that polarized. And for his critics, you can draw a straight line from his conquests to the problems of today. This user argues that by forcing all these different peoples in the South into his empire, Menelik is at least partly responsible for the ethnic conflicts that the country is still dealing with. And the accusations get even more serious, touching on the most severe crimes imaginable. Here, a user is directly connecting Menelik to a massive loss of life among the Oromo people, basically saying his conquests were genocidal in nature. And this one, while it shows you the raw, unfiltered anger that's still out there, there's no historical distance in a comment like that. It is pure present-day fury. For many people, Menelik isn't some complex figure from the past. He's a genocidal criminal. Full stop. So it all comes back to that first question. Menelik II was an anti-colonial icon who modernized his nation and saved it from being colonized. At the same time, he was an imperial conqueror whose expansion devastated entire cultures. His legacy forces us to ask this really tough question. Can a single person be both a nation's founding hero and its brutal conqueror? And history, it seems, doesn't really offer an easy answer.